What's going on, YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. A lot of things going on in Pittsburgh right now. Make sure to watch the rest of our trade or keep videos. We've done the Flyers, the Capitals, and now we're doing the Penguins. I think the Penguins are really interesting because it's more so about guys, especially this summer. There's a ton of guys that are UFAs this summer, and there's a ton of guys with some really bad contracts that you probably can't do anything with. Jeff Carter and Mikael Granlund. But other than that, there's going to be a lot of room for, kind of moving chess pieces around for the Penguins. So in terms of don't re-sign, let's get that out of the way. I think that one's pretty simple. Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith. I hate to say it, get rid of both of them. I know Jarry wants to come back. He likes Pittsburgh. He wants kind of redemption. I don't think he's going to get that opportunity. I think he's shown more than enough for the Penguins faithful to not believe in him. It's a really sad story. Hopefully he becomes a backup and can just kind of keep an NHL job and maybe work his way back up. I just don't think it's going to happen in Pittsburgh. I think, how do you sell that to the fan base? You really can't, right? I mean, at this point, it's just not going to happen. I think he needs to go somewhere else. Same thing for Casey DeSmith. Injuries, inconsistent play. It's pretty much a combination of all of those. Jason Zucker. Now, I know Zucker wants to come back to Pittsburgh too, but again, I think they just need to clean house there. They need to get younger. They need more skill, speed. It just didn't work. He's got to go. Same thing for Brian Dumoulin, a left shot defenseman. Just move on from him. Again, you've seen this story before. He gets injured way too much, can't stay healthy, can't stay in the lineup. He's not a reliable defenseman. And if you're going to put money into a defenseman, you want some kind of stability. And the Penguins haven't gotten that from Dumoulin. And I think it's just better off they kind of clean that one out the door too. In terms of guys that they should keep, I think that list is a little bit easier. Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. Those three for certain. You keep. You live and die until Crosby goes to free agency, whatever he decides to do in a couple years. That is your core three. That is what's kept the Penguins as good as they've been for the past 16 years. You do not touch those three. They just re-signed Letang and Malkin last summer. Crosby's only got a couple years left on his deal. Those are your three core pieces. I don't think they'll be able to trade a guy like Brian Rust. They just signed him to that extension as well last year, keeping the band together. I don't think he's moving anywhere. A couple of younger guys I'd like to see them keep. I'd like to see them keep a guy like Pierre-Olivier Joseph. I'd like to see them keep, who's the defenseman they got? Ty Smith. I'd like to see them keep guys like Alexander Nylander. I think those are really good players on this team that you should be kind of looking to have more in the lineup next year than you did this year. I know they're really not super great players, and we've seen them this year kind of struggle, all three of those younger guys. But they need to step it up next year if the Penguins want to get back to the playoffs. Easier said than done, but that's kind of the reality of the situation. Now, guys that could get traded. I think Rickard Rakell is an interesting piece here, because when I look at Rickard Rakell, maybe he's not the best player, right? Maybe he's a little overpaid, and maybe somebody doesn't want that deal. But if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm just looking for something new in that bottom six, because you've got Granlund, you've got Carter coming back. You're not moving those contracts. The only one that really any team would be willing to stomach is a guy like Rakell. And if you're going to bring guys in this summer, whether that's a goalie or a top defenseman or another guy, just to fill out your bottom six, you're going to need to probably move out one of those deals. And I think Rickard Rakell is one that teams would willingly stomach with maybe a little bit of retention to get a guy like Rakell. So I think that's something that you're looking at with Rickard Rakell. Probably one of the bigger names that would be available for a trade. A couple of other guys I look at. I don't know what Pittsburgh's thoughts are on some of these younger players like Drew O'Connor or Owen Pickering, but I think those are guys that are kind of on the fringe. If they're not good enough to make the lineup next year, move on from them. Trade them for guys that can play next season. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm figuring out what I'm doing with Owen Pickering. and Drew O'Connor, because I think those are two guys that could maybe jump into the lineup next year. And if there's value for those guys, which I think those probably the most valuable prospects on the Penguins, you try and find a way to get something done. You've also got guys like Samuel Poulin and Philip Hallander. Figure out what's going to happen with those guys. Are they NHL players or not? You got to figure that kind of stuff out. I think it's going to be really important for Pittsburgh to some of those fringe NHL guys, right? Even Ty Smith and Nylander. I think it's really important they figure out what those futures are, because those are guys that can get traded. You package that up with a first and second round picks, you could get some pretty good return for that, right? Maybe it ends up being a John Gibson or a defenseman or something to that effect, right? So we'll see what happens there. Another one that I think is really interesting is Jake Gensel. I think he's kind of the wild card here. Now, if I'm the Penguins and I'm trying to win next season, get back to the playoffs, if that's the philosophy, then you don't trade Gensel, right? It just doesn't make sense, because whatever you get for Gensel isn't going to be Gensel. He's been very inconsistent. I understand that. He's been an Islander killer, so if they make the playoffs and play the Islanders, you know Gensel's going to score. But it's just that inconsistency that's so infuriating with a guy like Jake Gensel. So, in my opinion, I would keep Gensel at least for the rest of this run, and until his contract is due. But until then, I'm sticking with him. I think that's really the best thing. Unless there is an offer you cannot refuse, like 2 first-round picks and one of your top prospects from another team, all right, then you take that deal. If not, there's no rush to trade a guy like Gensel right now. I don't think that's going to fix this team right off the bat. So let me know what you guys think down below. What do you guys think of the Pittsburgh Penguins? Who should stay? Who should go? Should they trade a guy like Jake Gensel? Let me know your guys' thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.